I know it's a difficult, I would say, time slot today, just before the beer and the end of the day, but yeah, let's make it happen. Okay, let's get into it. So, hi everyone, my name is Laurent, sounds French. I'm based in Singapore. I'm in charge of engineering for Nginx across APAC. So I'm working with the team to support customers on this technology. I will go through a few things to cover Nginx first, to give you a little brief of what Nginx is. And I think maybe most of you know what Nginx is about, but show a few more things and a few more details, so be careful as well. And go over deploying APIs, RESTful APIs, gRPC APIs, and GraphQL APIs, just to show you how to deploy these API gateway with those protocols. And one question which very often from our customers is how to secure these APIs. It's really interesting to be deploying them, but securing them is another challenge. So we will spend some time on that and going through demos. And yeah, we'll finish with a few more words on how these challenges are taken forward and how you could learn more as well on dealing with these issues. Okay? So, not being too serious, let's cover a little bit of history of Nginx. So who knows that guy, Igor? Probably all the developers who started deploying applications with Nginx know him. He's the one who was working for a website in Russia and who was facing a lot of challenges when it was about to maintain, I would say, availability of the web servers. So 10,000 concurrent connection on web servers like Apache, they were just crashing. And he was fed up of waking up in the middle of the night and restarting servers. Therefore, he created that technology, okay? So when he created that technology, he found out that, yes, it was working, but he wanted to make it available to everyone. And he released it as an open source project in 2004, okay? So since then, that technology has been used widely in most of the websites that you're running today. And I was mentioning the developers. When you look up for a web server or a container to experiment or to test an application, the first container that you would download is Nginx, okay? So the success of Nginx is mainly due to its, I would say, small footprint, its performance, and the fact that it's a flat file, flat configuration file. So most of people just like to go into that file, edit, reload, and boom, everything is done, okay? Apart from that, as I said, developers love Nginx, and they show their love, which is really interesting. So I don't see any laptops with that today, but when we, as Nginx and F5 employees, visit our customers, sometimes we see those stickers on laptops, and it's usually one of the giveaways that we have. I'm sorry today I don't have any, but this is something that we could definitely bring to you. And even in most, I would say, remote places, you could see developers really expressing their love for Nginx. So if Nginx is so much loved and used by so many people, why are we here talking about Nginx? So mainly, I would say, because here we are in API days, and Nginx is really, I would say, the most widely used API gateway, okay? So APIs are today, I would say, representing the majority of the traffic over the internet. Most of the applications that we're using are relying on APIs. Most of the transactions that we're doing are relying on APIs. And we have seen over the time how those APIs have been changing. Protocol have been evolving. The way that we represent the data has been evolving. And with security, with the speed of internet, a lot of things have been evolving as well. So things like REST, for instance, are things that we know about. We've been using them for quite some time. But they are also being challenged by new protocols, gRPC, GraphQL, are those newcomers when it comes to APIs. And we see an uptake of these protocols over time. And most of the statistics as well that we're seeing shows that they are picking up. For instance, for GraphQL, I will cover it a little bit later, but GraphQL is expected to be the major API protocol by 2025. That's what Gartner has predicted. And if we just look back at what Apidays was saying like 2 years ago, it was mainly about GraphQL, how to use it, how to implement it, what are the benefits, and so on. So moving forward, I think we're gonna have more to talk about when it comes to GraphQL. Okay. Most of the internet service provider or cloud providers also are analyzing the traffic that they see on the infrastructure, on their infrastructure, and they also confirm that API is now the majority of the traffic. Okay, so that means that yes, we can't get away from API today. We're gonna have to deal with it. So for that, when we are developers or decision makers, we have to kind of find a balance into giving the freedom of using APIs, but also making sure that we have some kind of control or governance in place to make sure that, yes, those APIs are useful, they need to be deployed and roll out fast, but they have to be rolled out in a secure way. So for developers, and the game is really to be able to spin up those APIs, deploy these APIs, and programmatically roll out these APIs. And as developer, again, in order to achieve so, it must not be very complicated. Okay, that has to be fast. Not everyone is an expert on Nginx configuration for sure, and wants to just expose on APIs and roll out his application. On the other hand, the infrastructure operators or staff usually wants to have a control over those APIs and those traffic which are rolled out in the organization. So there is that fine, I would say, balance to find among make it easy, but also make it secure and controlled. So for that, we, with I would say the power of Nginx, we have the ability now to address those kind of challenges by kind of splitting those responsibilities domains. One for the developers where he has more flexibility to choose what kind of enforcement that he would put in place, rate limiting, authorization, authentication, type of deployment that he would want for his APIs. But on the other hand, the infrastructure folks would like and will be able to enforce what is open and how that's going to be accessible. Which host name, which IP addresses, which type of browser that we would access, or which type of languages that we would access, which certificate that would be deployed to access and transfer data over these APIs, okay? And that has to be made in a way which is easy and smooth for everyone in the organization. So, with that being said, let's make it a little bit fun. First question of my quiz. When was the first release of Nginx? 2004? I think the one behind you was the first. I'm sorry. Okay, first giveaway. Good. There are more. Try harder, please. Okay. The other things that we said about deploying API gateways now is what are the API gateways and what kind of protocol do we handle with. So the first one, as I said, is the one that we know for quite some time and very easy, REST API. So text transaction with URL, with parameters, and these kind of things, we know them for ages. So no need to expand on them. GraphQL, a little bit different. I would say same exposure through HTTP, one endpoint, and inside that endpoint, I would say the query would kind of make it more specific. So there is an uptake, as I said, on GraphQL, and not everybody knows about it, but again, this API protocol has been developed and pushed by Facebook, and been made available in September. So again, this is something that loads of analysts have seen growing, and most of the developers now are considering GraphQL as a major, I would say, component of their applications. Okay, reason for that is to build queries very complex to get loads of data and to get exactly what they want from these APIs. But these are not the sole APIs protocol. You also have gRPC. Okay, gRPC also flowing over HTTP, mainly HTTP2, and the idea as well is to be able to data according to specific, I would say, format like you would define in your protobuf, for instance. Okay, so moving forward, another quiz. Did you follow the presentation when GraphQL has been released? You got it. Okay, thank you. So I know how to get your attention now. Okay, and the last one, gRPC. gRPC 2016. No one? Okay, I'll come up with another question later. Okay, so now that I said how to deploy those API, let me try and show you a demo around them and how we would make it easier for developers and infrastructure operators to keep control over what APIs are deployed and how they are deployed. So it's going to be a little bit challenging with one hand, but I think I'm going to make it. Okay. So as I said, Nginx is really a good tool to define configuration, to define the behavior of an API gateway, and do that very easily. To make it easy for developers and for operators, we have a framework that we call API Connectivity Manager, which is a wrapper where you're going to have a lot of operations and a lot of tools to be able to deploy your APIs, okay? So infrastructure staff will be able to operate the infrastructure level, meaning what API, what address, what host name, and what security enforcement that they're going to put in place. And on the other hand, the developers will have the ability to develop their own APIs, picking up their own policies, okay? So at that level, they're gonna have, if the network is getting faster, the ability to say, yes, for this API, I wanna specify an open API spec file. I wanna enforce ACL for that. I wanna put in place API authentication and do this kind of, I would say, enforcement easily, either via the GUI or through an API call to get that deployed very rapidly. And to get that deployed rapidly, we have it here in a shell script. Just get it here. So again, to make it easy for developers to populate and generate their infrastructure and roll out their API gateways, you have those API calls where you just say, okay, I want to create a new cluster or a new API gateway with that protocol, with that host name. Just push an API call to that management interface, and all the configuration is automatically generated, okay? And I showed here the whole configuration that is generated. Again, for the developers who know how to configure Nginx, the idea is to go and to leverage all of the flexibility and all of the capabilities of Nginx. Nginx has like 500 metrics or directives and even more. The idea is really to use and to generate for the developers all the best, I would say, in-class or best use case to get the most and the more efficient deployment of the API gateway. And be it for GraphQL, be it for gRPC, be it for REST APIs, this is how that's gonna be done and easily for the developers. Okay? That okay so far? Okay? So now we have seen how to deploy those APIs. Okay? Second topic is how do we secure these APIs? Okay? So same thing. As we said earlier, the challenge is really to have all of these security enforcement in place, but again, not to make them rely solely on the shoulders of the developers. So that's why now we're more into the shift left, I would say, trend. It's not only the infra people or infra staff to deploy all the security in place, but really to make sure that the security is taken into account earlier into the development process and earlier into the rollout process. Okay? So for that, the idea is really to make sure that we equip the developers and the API owners of tools that they could use and that they could include into the deployment as early as possible when it comes to coding the application, building the application, and of course, testing, building the API gateways with the applications. Okay? So for that, with the tools that we spoke about, Nginx and those capabilities, we leverage those capabilities to make sure that we integrate into Nginx a layer of functionalities to enhance the level of security. Nginx, as we said, is fastest proxy, lightest proxy in terms of capabilities, but in terms of security, we need to go a little bit further in analyzing the traffic. So for that matter, Nginx comes with, since the acquisition from F5, the WAF engine that has been integrated into Nginx. Okay? So for that, it makes it easier for the developers to integrate those security checks into the code and to have it, alongside the application, all along the development process, the testing process, and the deployment process. So the time here is saved massively, because again, I don't have to halt all the process, test the security, adjust it, and then come back to the developer, okay, test it again. That is something that could be and is integrated easily into a CI/CD pipeline and could definitely give visibility and control to all the security officers. So again, having the security earlier into the development process, it makes it easier either for the developer and either for the NetOps folks in the company. Okay? And for that, I would just emphasize one point. When we speak about API and API security, it's not just putting one technology in the chain. There are different aspects to take into account when we talk about security. Nginx, as I said, is the open source technology, really good for web server and proxy. But for security, it's not the sole responsible for security. So we've been discussing with a lot of analysts and security experts to find out that security comprises a lot, API security comprises a lot of aspects. The network security, the access control, and the application security are really interconnected aspects of the entire API security picture. Okay? I can't say today that I have one product that will address all of these aspects, unless I have maybe a SaaS service to do that. Okay? So for that matter, the idea is really to help developers to integrate as early as possible the tools that will give them the visibility and the control over the application. And for instance, why having such tool is important, just to make sure that even though some kind of traffic would traverse any layer in the infrastructure, there is a point in time in the infrastructure where I have that visibility, I have this action, this control point in terms of security to act on the APIs and to make sure that I have at least some mechanism in place to protect my APIs. And as you can see, it's not only one technology, but different bricks or different components put together that will elevate the whole level of security for when it comes to APIs. Okay? So, one question here. Which are the three components of the API security? Okay. Okay, good. So you have it. Good. Okay, so let me show you how easy it is to deploy those security component with Nginx. So as I said, we have our Nginx component deployed, and as an example, let me show you here. It's very easy, as I said earlier, to have those API gateway deployed with their own configuration generated by the environment. And I mentioned earlier, when we deploy those gateways, they go and fetch their configuration from the central manager, as I showed earlier, with all the directives in place to enforce the protocol. Okay, so we have here all of our instances deployed, and we can easily show that for each and every single application, we have here one security policy per, oops, sorry. So I have to stop it and share here. Sorry about that. Okay, so here you see for different API gateway, you could have a different security policy. And as I said earlier, the point is to have association. That's not working very well. This association of the gateway and the security policy through an API. So the developer can just go and say, I want to have a GraphQL API with that security policy, and that will be rolled out into the infrastructure automatically, meaning that I don't have to go and ask the infra folks the permissions and the operations to do that easily. Okay? So once this is done, I can have in place one security policy per type of APIs that I want to to deploy and to roll out. And that could definitely go through any type of protocol that I would consider. So here I would consider a GraphQL policy, and that policy would cover very granular aspects of the security for a GraphQL protocol. Okay? It could be the methods, it could be the depth of the queries, it could be the characters that I've been using in the queries. Really a good way to enforce the security of the GraphQL queries that I would submit to my application. Same thing for the gRPC protocol, a true way to enforce how the protocol will be used and how that protocol will be used accordingly to the protobuf that I have defined for this protocol, for these APIs. Okay? And if we just want to show it, I would say here we have example of requests that we can send for each and every single APIs and each and every single protocol, and see that the security technology would block, which is not making sense. So in this case, for a cross-site scripting, boom, I would have a blocking indication saying that, yes, I have issued a security violation and my request is blocked instantly. So I could go instantly to the log, or ask the security officers or the security team to go and check what's going on with those security events. And they would do that very easily because, as I said, those technologies would report what's happening from a security perspective and, would show what are the attacks, what are the applications which are being targeted, and which type of attacks as well are being issued easily. And again, all that to make and to relieve the developers from these type of operations. Okay, so really make everyone work together, but again offload each other from things that are of interest to them. Okay, same thing for GraphQL. If I make a request in GraphQL used through JSON, I have one here. So one which is successful is this one. Is that readable, more or less? I think so. And if I want to do it with an attack pattern into it, let me just take another one from here and send it right away. I use my cheat sheet. Same thing, I would have my request block directly from the security technology instantly. Okay? So again, all of that to say that those technologies are really there to give the freedom of using any API protocol that you want to use, but bring on top of that all the security aspect and security measures that you would like to have in place. Okay, these are micro API gateways. Okay, so these are containers running API gateways for GraphQL, gRPC, and REST APIs. But let's say that we want to go a little bit further with those APIs. So you would understand, you would understand that that's interesting. I would manage my API on a VM, for instance, and my API gateway on a VM, and make sure that the infra folks would divert the traffic to my Kubernetes environment. And I had to manage my configuration and my API specification on each and every single gateway, API gateway. Okay? So that's one of the big projects going on right now. API gateway by itself is interesting, but when it comes to Kubernetes environment and microservices environment, there is a challenge that needs to be faced. Why would I rely on a specific team to select the traffic or filter the traffic and divert it to my API gateway, and from my API gateway, route it to the different services? Okay? So in order to do so and to make it easier, there is another project that I wanted also to share with you, which is the Kubernetes Gateway APIs. Okay? So this project is purposefully intended to do that, to make sure that I get away from, I would say, harassing the infra staff from filtering and diverting the traffic to my API gateway and then do whatever I have to do. But I would give them instructions on what I expect, and they would generate the configuration. Therefore, they have, again, more control on what's going on in terms of what traffic is coming from the internet to my API gateway, to my services. And they have the ability to define, I would say, more control at that level. And for the application developer, don't have to deal with all those security aspects, all those protocol transformation, all these configurations which are more advanced. Okay? So the benefits are really there. Making sure that all those policies, certificates, security, routing are away from me, that are at the infrastructure level. And me as a developer, I just know that via a few routes, I inherit or collect the traffic and then could do whatever I want with it. If I want to split it between different services, I still have that freedom to do it, but I don't deal with what's coming in from the internet. Okay, so this is something I would say interesting to monitor. This is an open source project which has been started close to 2 years ago. We're now having the first betas of these gateways APIs, and the interest is to have those specifications as part of Kubernetes. So therefore, could be used in every type of environment from any vendors when it comes to routing traffic from an API perspective. Okay. So, I think we're almost on time. So, in order to help you with that, the idea here is really that APIs are easy to deploy. Again, no need to be an expert in configuration, few API calls or few shell scripts, and then I have my API gateway for any type of protocol that I would have to run. They are, I would say, really targeting the modern use cases. Today, when we discuss with most of the developers of our customers, we don't hear that much things about SOAP, XML. It's more GraphQL, gRPC, this type of modern, I would say, APIs, and those technologies are easy to do. In terms of protection, as I said, no need to go into the very technical and advanced configuration of Nginx. With tools like that, it's easy to have the best, I would say, the best-in-class type of configuration generated. Okay, and the shared responsibility as a developer include those tools in my CI/CD pipeline, and then the security office, the person responsible for security will be in charge and will have the information that they need to decide and to act upon security. But me as a developer, I have the freedom to roll out everything that I want. Okay. So to learn more, there are a few as well that I wanted to share. Like here, the API gateway and what is an API gateway with Nginx. So you have videos and blogs and documents around that. There is also a very interesting series of API gateways covering the different, I would say, aspects on configuring the Nginx API gateways on GraphQL gRPC and what can be done, what can be enhanced when you want to manage those configuration by yourself. And I shared as well another aspects on the Kubernetes Gateway API, because it's also very interesting, innovative ways to deploy API Gateway, considering that more and more of the deployments are done over Kubernetes right now. So very, I would say, interesting things to read. And for the audience who is more local to Singapore and ASEAN, we have a community of users that we call the super user that we kind of rebooted 2.0 recently, where we share all of what we talked about today on how to optimize, how to learn, how to know, how to play with Nginx, so benefits of it in your environment. We do have, I would say, events where we gather together. We do have sessions where we go over presentation and labs sometimes. And we also have tests as well, so you can take them and get badges over that. So you are recognized as a Nginx expert. Okay? So that's what I have to share with you. Any questions so far? Sure. Yes, you have. Yeah. You have, yes. So Nginx is part of F5. So we have those glue between F5 and Nginx. The component is called CIS, Container Ingress Services, just to make sure that, yes, I can communicate with the Nginx Ingress controller. In the case of Kubernetes environment, if it's not a Kubernetes environment, then service discovery or API calls would help you to do that. Yes, yes. So either on F5 or either on Nginx, you could load balance gRPC traffic granularly. Yep, yep. That's a good, okay, so maybe depending on what your security, I would say, officer would say, you would have either to terminate all the gRPC and do a kind of HTTP tunnel and divert the traffic inside your network, or re-encrypt the traffic, or do this kind of thing. But maybe, yeah, we can discuss that. We have the ability to do it granularly, very finely. Okay. Any other question? No more question? So now I release you for the beer now, then. Thank you for your attention. And if you have any questions, just ask us. You have my email there if you want.